The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Now, out of, from my memory, in regards to imports, probably me and Brooks, I remember when they came through and, obviously winning titles, that was like a big deal. I remember, dudes would see him out and stuff. And then...
How they hated going out.
Yeah.
Well,
they went out a couple of times.
Yeah, they were at the R&B clubs and that. And then you had Willie Farley, who was dope. And I remember that clearly as well because it was the year that the Sixers were sponsored by, I think, N1.
Yep.
And I really liked the jerseys and the warm-up tops. It was the one year that I went and bought all the Sixers merch.
Yeah, and everyone not equated him to, but likened him to Jordan. He played a very similar style, a little bit smaller, but he copied all of his moves.
Yeah.
Silky smooth, and fun to play with. He was exciting. He was great. Brought the crowd into the games. So.
And then the other import that I remember more recent is Jerome Randall.
Yep.
So for me, out of those four, they're just all amazing in their own right to watch as a spectator. But as someone who played with them, who was captain during some of the time that they were playing with you, how was it playing with those imports? Who was your favourite import to play with and why?
Jeez.
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it?
You must start an argument here.
I didn't play with Randall. I enjould watching him play.
That's right,
He's
yeah.
one of the players that, through that era, I would have paid to watch. It was exciting. Favourite one to play with would have been Darnell. He's not as offensively talented as the other ones, but he, as a whole game and entirety of a player, just was one of those guys that whatever you needed to win the game, he would do. So if you needed rebounds, he would have had 12 rebounds. If you needed blocks, he would have had 5 blocks. And that first championship where we won in Melbourne against the Magic, he had them second-guessing everything. He must have had 3 or 4 blocks early in the game and decisive blocks, like swatting it into the 10th row. And so virtually from then on, everyone was shooting, kind of looking for him.
Yeah.
And he just changed the whole game. And we went over after the 98 or 99 championship, we got invited to the World Club Championship, and we played against the best European club teams and NBA teams. And it was good to see him on that international stage, just doing exactly the same thing. He was a remarkable player.
He was cooler than KB too. Yeah, better dress sense.
Bit more swagger. And then so that's, so you ended up with 3 championships.
Yep.
And 2 finals MVPs.
Yep. Just one more championship than Andrew.
You don't have to bring that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're comparing, just one more.
I'm summarising.
Sure, they were sort of giving them away back then, I think. Yeah.
And yourself, you got 2 and 2 as well. And then Brett, you've retired in 09, and you have retired in the following year.
Yep.
2010. So, what I then want to ask you guys is, because I watched you guys compete a lot, and there were some players or clubs that I deem as either legendary players or legendary clubs that you guys would have played against, that I'd really be interested to know what you guys thought, of them as competitors, teammates, etc. I guess for football, being a West Coast Eagles fan, before 95, I remember dudes like Lewis, was it Peter Matera?
Peter Matera, yeah.
As Phil came after.
Great player.
Yeah.
5-time All-Australian, North Smith medalist, premiership player.
Yeah, so you would have played against Phil, not Peter? Or
Both.
You played against both?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess starting there, how was your experience playing against both those guys? Because I remember them being crazy on the field.
Oh, yeah. Crazy fast, crazy skills. Peter Matera was one of my idols. So play against him, the Roo boy, man, it's unbelievable.
Did you play the same position?
He played more as a wingman, he's a genuine wingman, and that link. I just have these visions of him running down the wing and taking 4 or 5 bounces and kicking goals. He was an unbelievable player. Whereas Phil was a bit more close to home. He was that half forward pocket, like very dangerous. He probably was one of those guys that helped change the way that those small forwards played, with lots of pressure, tackling, and being able to keep that ball inside 50. So two very different type players, but yeah, that West Coast team through there. Chris Lewis, I love watching him play. My wife's an old West Coast fan, and she had all their posters up on her wall when she was young. So I remember all those. But Glenn Jakovic's.
That's right.
Your John Worsfold's, Guy McKenna's, Peter Sumich's,
McIntosh in the back.
Brett Hetty, McIntosh.
Yeah. It's an all-star cast, isn't it?
Dean Kemp. You just rattle these blokes off. They're all Hall of Fame. They're an incredible player. They had an incredible side back then when they came into the competition, and built on that, won a few flags. But yeah, Peter Materio, he's probably in my. Well, we did a top 5. He was in my top 5 when we were talking about the best players or Indigenous players that I've ever seen play the game.
And then I guess so they were early to late 90s. I think Peter Materio was that early.
Yeah.
Phil was
a little bit later. Yeah.
Bit later. So then, I guess the question to you, similar, in that 90s bracket, my favourite team was, the Magic, Southeast Melbourne Magic. And I remember, Robert Rose, Bruce Bolden, I guess Scott Ninnis, somewhere in there.
He's not that good.
Lucas, I think, was one.
Darren Lucas, Dean Utoff, John Dodge. Andrew Parkinson.
Parkinson, he used to pop the three.
A little microwave. And they were the measuring stick at that time. The Brian Goorjian teams out of Melbourne, they were all defensively orientated, probably except some of those teams where you had Scott Ninnis and Darren Lucas running the wing, and Darren Utoff throwing it full court, and just hitting them on dimes, laying it up. They created so much pressure, and then just ran off of that, and no wonder they dominated.
And then if you look at, going back to the Crows and AFL, if you look at then playing against the latter West Coast teams where you had Judd, Cousins and Kerr,
Embley.
And I think that was like 05-ish, and then for a few years. How did you find competing against the Eagles of that era, and would you say that that's debatably, the best midfield in AFL history?
Yeah, they'd go down as one of the best in AFL in that era, definitely. It's hard to compare when you got so many good midfield groups that have come through. Brisbane Lions, Geelong team. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to see where they sit, but they definitely were. Even that Sydney team that they played those epic finals and games against over that time too. It would have been they were great. We could never get past them.
I remember seeing some epic battles.
Yeah, we had some great games. It was the three of us. It was us, and there's always these battles talked about between West Coast and Sydney, but we were all in that same. The three of us, I think, at that time, top 3 teams in the competition for probably 5 or 6 years, and it was always one of those things that we always seem to have Sydney's measure. Sydney for a period of time had West Coast measure, and then West Coast had our. It was like how we all matched up on each other. It was very. There were some great battles, and it would have been nice to get that opportunity to play against one of them in the big dance, but just couldn't get through because they were just some of those they just played awesome footy at the right time, and we thought we had them here once, once in, might have been 05. Or
I reckon that's the game where I remember, man.
Yeah, we were up, and then
Yeah.
they just came out after half time and just like destroyed us. So, jeez, what happened there? But we needed to be bathed. We needed a timeout.
Yeah.
This timeout. But yeah.
And then I guess in that era, when we go back to NBL, the Magic had then turned into the Titans by that period. And I mean, who were the star players that you recall from the Titans?
I think as we kind of moved into the turn of the century and kind of 2005 onwards, the Wildcats were probably the team and the measuring stick.
Yeah.
And WA, they do sports so well over there with West Coast and Freo, and then the Wildcats. Like they're the only team I think that's made finals for 33 years plus or whatever, which is so impressive how that organisation is run and the teams they've put together, and that kind of era where they had Ricky Grace and James Crawford, Vlahoff, Fisher, Pinder, amazing teams where they've just been able to keep revolving great players through the door to today, where they've got best player I've seen nearly ever play in the league in Bryce Cotton. So it's just exciting players that are able to get there.
The lesson. 97. Oh, yeah.